Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda Sharp, and thank you for joining us for today's Data Link in the Public Cloud Strategy, Offerings, and Monetization webinar. Today, we will be hearing from Sean O'Grady, Suzanne Gallagher, Matt Missy, Juan Orlandini, Pete Kratz, Phil Okonski, and Kent Christensen. All lines have been muted. This webcast is being recorded and will be posted on the training page on the internet under the Teams tab. It is now my pleasure to turn it over to Sean.
Thanks, Amanda. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us on this topic. I'm very excited about this topic. I've written a couple mails on the subject. Maybe you've seen them, but I want to kick it off, give you a kind of a high-level perspective and a piece or two of advice, if I could, before we turn it over to the experts to dig into the details. So first, the perspective. You know, it may seem odd to y'all that we're embracing public cloud so remarkably, and odd only because for the last 4 or 5 years we have definitely thought of the public cloud providers as our competition, and even our partners have thought of them as competition. You know, we've heard executives from people like NetApp and Cisco that have said their #1 competitor is AWS. So, you know, what a number of things have evolved, though. I think that we have really found our way to a point where we, #1, understand that this is something that our customers are going to want to take advantage of. Second, that it's something that makes perfect sense for certain workloads. And we'd be stupid not to, in fact, we'd be doing our customer a disservice by not making it available to them. And last but not least, we know, and especially this comes from being part of Insight now, we now have a better bead on how to make money and monetize helping our customers make this move. So this feels like a big change. In some ways it is, in some ways it isn't. You know, for those of you that have been here for a long time, you know that we have always prided ourselves on being agnostic about bringing the best solutions to our customers. And people often think of this as, you know, the fact that we represent multiple vendors. And that's true, we do represent multiple vendors. But if you think about it, it's more than that. We represent multiple technology platforms. So, you know, you can think about, if you're a storage person, you can think about the difference between block and file or network storage. Right, those were different vendors, but they were also different technology platforms. And we prided ourselves, and you can think of several different examples in networking and server as well, backup, data protection, where we've not just merely represented multiple vendors to our clients, but multiple technology platforms, different platforms that make sense for different workloads. So from that perspective, this is really just an extension of what we've always done for our clients. And really, I think, an important step for us to take, both for our future as well as for the future of our customers. So, you know, my advice to you, so that's the perspective and the backdrop. My advice is for you to think about it that way, and not overcomplicate it to the point that you're reluctant to go talk to your customers about it because it feels so different to you. You're going to hear about today a number of examples of engagements that we've already closed or are in the process of working. Some of them come from the legacy Insight team, but many of them come from the legacy Data Link team. And you'll recognize the customers, and you'll recognize the account executive, and you'll recognize the architect. And these are people just like you who have gone out and asked, you know, found out from their customer what they're doing in public cloud and found a way for us to help them make that happen. So in some ways, this can be a complicated topic, and we've got a host of experts that are going to talk to you today. And I don't know how long this presentation got pared down to, but I've probably seen hundreds and hundreds of slides on the topic. And the team has worked really hard to try to give you as much information as possible to prepare you to go out and have this conversation with your clients. And I think that's all good. But I don't want that to scare you because, you know, sometimes you're not going to know everything anyway, right? It's impossible. This is a very big subject. And no matter how prepared you are to go talk to your client, your client may ask you a question that you don't know the answer to. And if that stops you from going out and having the conversation, I think that's a real shame. Because the fact is, on whole, our customers understand this way less than we do. And, you know, I've probably spoken in the last 30 days to, I don't know, 14, 15 CIOs, senior IT executives. This is on everybody's plate, and most of them really have no clue what to do next. I've spoken to one CIO that says this isn't on his plate. Fair enough, that's fine. Not on their plate. Most of them say it's on their plate. I spoke to one CIO who said they've got everything figured out, don't need our help. Most of them said we're stuck. We kind of have an idea what we want to do. By the way, a lot of them carry MBOs that have bonus objectives to moving workloads to the public cloud. So, you know, we have a real opportunity to help them. We're good at it. It's not that different than what we've done in the past. And we now know how to monetize it. So I'm going to encourage you to not make it overly difficult, to get out, find out what your clients are doing. If they ask you something you don't know the answer to, don't worry about it. Come back and talk to people in this group and figure out if it's something we can help with or not. If the answer is no, tell the customer that's not something we do. If the answer is yes, we'll get the right people to help go pursue the opportunity. So thank you again for listening. I hope you take something away from it, and more importantly, I hope you get out and talk to your clients about what they're doing and how we can help. So that's it for me. I'm going to hand it over to a new member of our team. Came over from the classic Insight organization when we merged our cloud businesses together. I don't know, 30 days or so ago. Matt Nissi is running our public cloud practice, and he's going to be our first speaker today. Slide over to you, Matt.
All right. Thanks, Sean. Yeah, just real quick, just a little bit more about myself. I am coming over from the Legacy Insight practice. I was part of the hybrid cloud practice on that team, and we've engaged on several public cloud opportunities. Prior to that, I've been engaged with public cloud for approximately the last 5 years. So been an exciting time around this. But really, what I want to do today is, as Sean said, I want to define, you know, how we engage around public cloud and how we all make money, very important, and how we can help our customers. So what you're going to see here is we're going to define a framework that you can go and actually sell and help those customers, help those CIOs along that journey so that they understand that, oh, okay, I can move this ball forward. I can accomplish something around public cloud. So if we think about our platform, Cloud and Data Center Transformation, or as it's been known, Data Center of the Future, it's really all about those workloads, right? When a CIO is thinking about, you know, what they want to provide to the business units, to their customers within the organization, ultimately their external customers, it really boils down to the workloads. And how do we support those workloads? Well, we do that with our platforms, be it the cloud platforms, hyper-converged, converged, or traditional platforms. But it doesn't stop there. The customers really need to understand how do the people, the process, the technology, and even the financial aspects play into those platforms in order to support the workloads. So as Sean mentioned, really what we're focused on here today are those cloud platforms. So think of this as an expansion of our capabilities through being able to, you know, what we've done with joining Insight and DataLink and the expertise that various individuals are bringing to bear and where we've engaged. It's all about expanding our capabilities to include public cloud and integrating those with our other platforms as necessary, right? It's not to say that we're only going to focus on cloud platforms. We're going to do it all, and you'll see that through this presentation today. So, like I said, you know, we've been engaged. I've personally been engaged on public cloud for quite some time, and let me just share just some things that I've seen on how we've engaged thus far. And these are just simple statements. So every customer we've engaged is on the journey. We had to figure out where and then engage them at that spot. And we're going to define what the public cloud journey looks like. This is just a simple fact. Every public cloud opportunity that we've engaged in has been from the perspective that they want to move to the public cloud. They're not trying to decide if the public cloud is the right thing to do. every one of these customers does have an on-premises environment. They're not abandoning that. You know, you'll get various aspects depending upon the customer that you're engaging with. They'll make statements like, oh, we want to move everything to public cloud. I think we all know that there's a reality that the hybrid cloud is going to exist for the foreseeable future. You know, so let's not abandon that. Again, this is an expansion of capabilities. The typical ask that I have seen, that I get, is how do I do this? I get the what and the why. Help me to navigate this journey and to do this right. Again, to Sean's point about what, you know, the CIOs and moving that ball forward. The reality of the situation is that most of these opportunities came from a single simple question. It really is this simple. What are you doing around public cloud? By asking that question, you'll probably get more answers than you really want. But we can help them, and that's what we're going to define here. So again, just some sampling of the questions that we've addressed in the past around cloud is, hey, should I move to the cloud? How do I determine what workloads go where? Or maybe a better question would be, how do I know, you know, how the workload should go into public cloud, right? How do I address security? How do I gain efficiencies and agility by leveraging public cloud, et cetera? So it's really about helping the customers navigate those questions, and that's where we come in, right? That's how we can help. We can help define and answer those questions. So let me highlight some of these wins. So every single logo that you see on this slide, these are the various public cloud opportunities that we've had. I think folks are familiar with the ones on the left, Anheuser-Busch, Come and Go, Carlson, Wagonlit, and these are all about analyzing their environments, helping them to understand what they can do in public cloud, and we'll give statements like what's listed up there in Anheuser-Busch. 80% of the workloads need to be in public cloud by 2020. Well, we can help them to see if that's even possible, right? And we're engaging with them on that now. We're doing assessments of their data centers, helping to build those business cases and rationalize those applications. Keep that word in mind, rationalize. Same thing with Come and Go. Let me highlight three that you might not be real familiar with. BBDO. BBDO is part of the Omnicom network or conglomerate. What we did is we went in, analyzed 3 applications that they had already selected to move to public cloud. We modeled those in AWS and Azure. We presented a migration plan and built a cost model and provided a recommendation that said, hey, you need to modernize your application. That means upgrade the OS, upgrade the supporting databases, so that way we can even begin to move those into public cloud. And they're in the process of doing that. We expect a re-engagement with a new migration project here soon. Honeywell's interesting because they have major spend already in Microsoft Azure. However, what they shared with us is that IT is a major roadblock. So it's encouraged the business units and the dev units to go out and purchase their own pay-as-you-go Azure subscriptions. So what they've asked us to come in and do is provide a governance framework and design and a long-term staff aug to help them with operations. So that way they can get their costs under control and help IT to not be a roadblock to public cloud. We expect much follow-on engagement, so we just started getting engaged with Honeywell. Pandora's got over 2,000 PaaS resources deployed into Azure. Again, they also asked us around a governance framework. Costs weren't so much of a concern as it was just being able to manage the applications that they have deployed in those PaaS resources. We also did a subscription and a tenant consolidation. So there's a lot of opportunity with these customers out there. And we have a very healthy pipeline built up around public cloud. Again, all by asking that simple question, what are you doing? So let's define kind of where we started from a public cloud practice and what our plan is initially. How are we going to provide this engagement framework? So just a couple statements here. Initially, we're going to focus on Azure. Why? And I'm not going to highlight all of these, but I will highlight some key ones. One is that right now it's the easiest for us to monetize. We can leverage the Microsoft relationship. We can't enable on all these clouds initially. Despite what perception might be or what folks think, there's not parity between these public clouds. Some of the concepts might be similar, but that's really where it stops. So there's a large amount of learning. There's a large amount of understanding the different services that are available for each of those public clouds. And so we have to start somewhere. And so, you know, given the fact that with our relationship with Microsoft, Microsoft's 30% of our overall corporate revenue, that's where the opportunity seems to make the most sense. Right now, we'll continue to build out on AWS. Not to say that we're not going to do AWS. We will engage on those opportunities as they come in. It's just from a plan perspective and how we're going to enable. You know, we're going to be very prescriptive in making sure that we do this right. The second piece of this is that really, if you're at all familiar with AWS and what where they've focused and their messaging and that sort of thing, Amazon's point of view on hybrid cloud is that it's a transition to the real cloud. So some of that messaging makes it very difficult, or more difficult, I should say, to adapt to our platform and integrate that whole concept of a hybrid cloud. Their other point of view is that on-premises or private clouds are not real cloud. At least that's what they've said in the past. Now, I've referenced an article there that says, hey, AWS opens the door to hybrid clouds. And so I encourage you to go through and read that article. I would argue that that's not necessarily a hybrid cloud yet, but it at least validates what the market is saying, is that, and Kent says this a lot, but it's journey to the hybrid cloud. And that's very much our premise. So let's define that application rationalization, which is really where every customer, when they're engaged in a public cloud opportunity, should really start thinking about, right? Again, it all goes back to the fact that this is all about the application. So if you think about the 5 R's of application rationalization, this was defined by Gartner about 6 years ago now. Retire, replace, rehost, retain and wrap, and refactor. Every customer could potentially migrate their applications into public cloud if they consider the rationalization for the application. Retire, I think we're seeing that now with Exchange, you know, moving to Office 365. But where most of the customers are considering is on this rehost, right? And there's trade-offs by engaging on the cloud journey or looking at the application rationalization. There's trade-offs in initial complexity, initial cost, and then long-term cost, right? And if you think about, just as an example, rehost, again, I'm not going to go through all of this. I would encourage everybody to take a longer look at this and kind of get really familiar around the 5 R's of application rationalization, because this will be important here in a minute, and you'll see why. But for the rehost on the complexity, you know, there's low initial complexity, but that cost, and I think some folks have seen this real world, can be high to very high, and it's usually the lowest long-term, the highest long-term TCO. For taking the approach of a rehost. Conversely, there's the refactor, right, which upfront requires a lot of complexity, a lot of development work, a lot of coding. However, the cost long-term is usually lower because it provides a very high ROI, and the TCO long-term is usually very low. So with that, why are the 5 R's important? So the 5 R's show how an organization could take advantage of the public cloud and what level of effort is required for each one. So Pete lovingly refers to this as the spine. and what is this really? This is the cloud journey. Okay, and so if you think about it, you know, customers on the left-hand side of the cloud journey, you know, really can focus on that retire, replace, rehost. That's where they can gain the most value for them. But ideally, they want to move from left to right, and you can see some of the attributes, you know, with lower initial investment to high initial investment as they move from left to right, but also our strategic value as a service provider increases as we move to left to right. In other words, that stickiness within the customer increases greatly. So this shows an organization how they can take advantage of the public cloud and, quite honestly, what the level of effort is required for each. So what's the key takeaway from this? Every customer is somewhere on the journey. We have to figure out where and then engage them at the spot. Let me give you a little anecdote. So I think everybody knows this, but Insight provides, we're an LSP, a licensed service provider around Azure Enterprise Agreements. We own 1,400 of those. Insight is a digital partner of record on 2.5%, or 35 of those. What that means is that we have engaged services on roughly 35 of those 1,400. There's just a huge opportunity just with even in our own accounts that we already own from an EA perspective around public cloud, and in particular around Azure. So again, familiarize yourself with the cloud journey. And the key point here is that organizations, again, are somewhere on this journey, and in most cases, multiple units within an organization are at various places. So we can engage at various points within an organization to help them mature on this cloud journey. So what about solutions? So let's make this more real, right? So what solutions can map to where the customer is at on their public cloud journey? How do we engage? That's what we're going to talk about here on out. So again, these are the various solutions as this builds out that we can provide, right? Hybrid cloud, workload alignments, business continuity, all the way down to the blue metal offerings. We're on DevOps, data and analytics, right? And this sort of maps out to where a customer is at on their journey and where we can engage. It's not to say that you can't have these conversations, you know, say around Azure Stack for someone that's just, you know, all about on-premises data center. But it helps to give some guidance on what solutions can be positioned for the customer depending on where they're at in that public cloud journey. So how do we engage in the conversation? A couple key things here. Your audience, when you engage on a public cloud conversation, should be business leadership, an IT CIO or directors, cloud architects or cloud advisory boards. Quite frankly, if you're having a public cloud conversation with engineers, it's not a good place to be. Because they may not know all of the ins and outs around, you know, from an application perspective or a rationalization. Really, your conversation should be focused on that leadership type level. And the first question should always be, hey, what are you doing in the public cloud? And that answer will identify where they're at in that journey. And again, going back to the spine, you can find the attributes here. Again, I'm not going to go through each one of these, but these attributes of where they're at in their journey. And that will guide you in terms of how to have the conversation and what to position as you go forward in that conversation. But it all goes back to, again, that your audience really needs to be focused on the leadership or those cloud architects or those cloud advisory boards, folks that are already thinking about cloud in some way, shape, or form. So, what's this bring us to, right? How do we approach the cloud journey? What is the public cloud strategy framework? And I think that's what customers are asking for. This one is centered upon Azure because there's some Azure-specific topics maybe to look for, you know, as you position services. However, the key takeaway is that when we go in and we talk about the cloud journey, a lot of customers are going to ask, well, I get that, but I don't know how to embark on that journey or continue my journey. I struggle with that. And so we've got to be the thought leaders, right? We've got to make them understand that this is what the framework or how to drive in this. Again, so there's our spine, right? So if we think about a public cloud strategy, we have to engage with our customers, and that's positioning assessments, whether they're workload alignment or public cloud readiness, providing some sort of workshop that helps them to identify what the art of the possible is. How do we transform? So this is making it real. We're going to do application design, cloud governance and security, workload migrations, business continuity DR, et cetera. And then optimize that environment, manage services, cloud operations, health checks, DevOps and cloud native type applications, data analytics. This is what you can sell. Engage, transform, and optimize. These are examples of the services that you can go and sell. This is the framework that you can provide to the customer that says, this is what your cloud strategy should look like. This is how I move the ball forward. Kent, in here in a little bit, is going to talk about some of our plays, our specific partner plays. They can go through this iteration on that. They can go through and engage, identify what that opportunity looks like around that particular play, actually create the design and then optimize that. So this is what you can essentially sell. First line questioning and objection handling, these are examples of some of the questions, right, and potential answers. Familiarize yourself with this. Obviously, we will continue to build these out as we go, but this is kind of what we've seen. Again, what's your cloud strategy? Have you moved things? And you'll get anywhere from nothing all the way to, yeah, we're happy, we're using, we're mature into it, and how you can insert yourself into that conversation to be relevant to sell more services around public cloud. So ultimately, what's the ask? What do you need to go after? Again, start by asking, what are you doing with public cloud? Drive to one of the key sweet spots. So strategic, position the public cloud strategy, engage, transform, optimize. Or you can center on tactical. You may find that, hey, they're more mature, but they need help around business continuity, disaster recovery solutions. Focus on that. That's a big opportunity in public cloud. Same with public cloud governance and operations. You saw a few opportunities that we've already engaged on specific to those. Go and engage on those, and we're going to have follow-up enablement to further help with those kinds of conversations. So now we're going to launch into the enablement and field services. I'm going to ask Juan Orlandini to kind of give his point of view around public cloud in light of field services, and then we're going to talk real briefly about enablement. So Juan, go ahead.
Hey, thanks, Matt. So just want to point out a couple things. First is that a lot of what we're talking about here is something that we've covered before. It looks like it's new, it smells like it's new, but it really isn't. A lot of the underlying technologies that we have here are the same kind of a thing. There's storage, there's data protection, there's compute, there's networking. It's a little bit different way of looking at it, but it's something that we're tremendously really good at. And what we shouldn't be fearful is a change in the terminology or the location of where that stuff is being done. It's going to take a little bit of effort on both the seller's part and also the architecture and engineering side of the house to learn this stuff, because it is slightly different. But it is not a huge leap. It's not a leap into a complete unknown. And we should focus on the fact that for a lot of our customers, that leap is going to be much more difficult. And that's good for us, because that means that there's mystery in it. And every time there's mystery, there's margin in it. And that's what we should focus on, all right? So we've, with Matt's help and a lot of the team that's on the call today, we've identified how we're going to make that transition for both our sellers and both of our architects and engineers. So there's courses that Matt's going to cover here in a little bit. There's some that are focused on the selling side of the equation, but there's also quite a bit of material that we're going to be educating ourselves on in terms of the engineering and architecture that's going to go into this. We've identified the architects that are going to be going through this. We already have some that have gone through this, but there's quite a few of us that are going to be going and taking these courses and becoming extremely proficient at this. So in very short order, you're going to see that the vast majority of us are going to be extremely comfortable with this conversation. You should go fully expecting to be able to have a very meaningful and very profitable conversation with our customers. And Matt, I think you're going to cover the rest of the training material that we're going to do in enablement.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I'd like to add too, like I said, we've already been executing against public cloud, so we've got some key individuals, and we'll highlight some of those individuals later. They're very familiar and up on public cloud and can help go and do this. So, this is the opportunity for us is that public cloud's new to, quite honestly, everybody, right? And you heard Sean earlier that, around some of those challenges, and so the opportunity is ours to capture, to provide that thought leadership. And here's how we're going to do it. So just some quick notes on upcoming enablement. I'm meeting with various folks on some of their QBRs, and I'm more than happy to do that on a more individual basis. But we've got sales enablement, additional digital partner of record materials. I'll cover that in higher detail here in a bit. We're going to do some role plays and other internal training this month, and then we've got a road show that we're scheduling out where we will visit various cities in region around our enablement and working with the various account teams. And then we also have, as Juan mentioned, our technical enablement. So what's this look like from sales tools and materials and development? So we've got internal, we've got a battle card ready, we've got some training materials ready. This deck does include questions to ask, objection handling, familiarize yourself with that. A lot of the external material is still in process and being developed, so that is forthcoming and it should be out soon. What does the public cloud Azure sales training look like? So everybody will get this deck, so I encourage you to go out and take a look at these basic materials right now. So the Microsoft for Enterprises What and Why is a presentation that you can go out and look at. Really sets the stage on positioning Azure as well as some of the basic capabilities. There's an optional ebook that I would encourage everybody to take a look at. And then there's an introduction to Azure that's a little more technical. It's more of a 100 type level. There's more to come. We're going to have more materials that we're working with Microsoft specifically on around sales enablement, right? So how do I have the conversations? How do I position certain things within Azure? That's coming. We're working very closely with Microsoft on that. I also wanted to give everyone a sense of what the technical enablement looks like. So we've defined a level 200, 300, 400 level, and then they also have, the technical folks also have an enablement plan that they have to go through. And you can see, you know, just for a level 200, there's roughly between 40 and 60 hours of investment that's required, and that's just for the material. From the perspective of hands-on and, you know, getting familiar, obviously that takes much more time, and so that's part of the reason why we want to be very methodical in our enablement and making sure that we focus very clearly on how we can win business very quickly and very fast. So let me talk real quick here about the Microsoft partnership. So obviously I mentioned earlier that Microsoft's roughly 30% of our revenue. These are some of the numbers. You know, we drive roughly about $6.5 billion in revenue. That's 14% year over year. Cloud revenue is significantly growing, especially if you look at the Azure side, $428 million. Microsoft has made a significant investment in Insight Data Link, and they call that the Azure Go Big. You may have heard of it. But Microsoft's provided $2.1 million in funding for headcount, enablement, go-to-market, various resources from Microsoft. And you can see our goals down there. But one of the big goals that I want to center on is this idea of consumption. And consumption is what is very important to the Microsoft sales team. So if you go out and you engage with the Microsoft sales team, what's going to light the board up for them is how we drive consumption around Azure. And that's what our public cloud strategy that Engage, Transform, Optimize is really designed to do, is to drive that consumption. Microsoft has moved, Paul Earhart put these slides together, he calls it the cheese, right? But how do we get paid on Microsoft products? And it really goes back to that consumption rate, right? And what's going to light the board up for those Microsoft sales teams. It's all based on consumption. But you can see how the incentives have grown over the years to roughly over 60% of the incentives budget. So what does the revenue look like for public cloud? How do we make money? And again, this is based upon a Microsoft or an Azure example. So we get services revenue, right? That's one of the key components of monetizing public cloud. We get GP dollars on our services, consulting, managed, one-call, and field services. But then the other side of that is that we do get MS consumption revenue, and that's the bulk of what we get around public cloud. Digital partner of record. What is digital partner of record? Well, that's an incentive that Microsoft offers that if we provide services to a customer, Microsoft will pay us on the consumption that we have influenced through those services. That is digital partner of record. And I'm going to show an example of what that looks like here in a moment. We also get cloud solution provider and obviously the EA agreements. But the point is that this is an iterative engagement with the customers. You can also build up kind of an annuity revenue based upon the incentives, based upon things like the CSP. You can build that book of business around the public cloud. So what does the profitability around Azure look like? And again, I'm not going to go into the specific numbers. Take a look at this slide, ingest it. But from the left-hand side, LSP, reseller incentives, and the digital partner of record, those kind of go hand in hand. Obviously, you can see that there's a pretty significant opportunity for making money on Azure around the EEAs. You've got the initial sell of the EEA, which isn't as big, but then digital partner of record. 7% on consumed revenue up to 100K annually. Basically, what that means is that if you go out and provide services to that customer and they're already consuming Azure, we can get up to 7%. That 20% incentive is for net new consumption quarter over quarter. So if we drive net new consumption, we can get 20% on that consumption itself. And then also we can sell Azure via the CSP, and that's roughly 10 to 15%. So what does this look like from a practical example, right? So this is a scenario. You can walk through this, but I just want to show this, that it's real. This is based upon some real projects that we've provided in the past. This one's using that, hey, we did an assessment of 200 applications. 90 of those would move to Azure. They're going to consume things like Azure Active Directory, and this is what it looks like based upon the current incentives that we have available to us today, from the EA build revenue all the way down through the services and the digital partner of record. So a total GP for a single year on public cloud could be, for this particular example, was $266K. So in terms of the context for public cloud, again, in particular around Azure, are the individuals that you're seeing. This is the program leadership. We've got our Data Link leadership, and then our Microsoft channel team that's aligned to Insight and Data Link. But when you have a public cloud opportunity, again, in particular around Azure, these are the individuals that you should reach out to. Obviously, Juan Orlandini, Chief Architect with the Principal Architects, Mike Willis on the Managed Services side, Scott Cameron on the Consulting Services. Feel free to reach out to myself. Obviously, Kent's in there as well. Reach out to Kent if you've got questions or need support. As we build this out, obviously we'll add to those individuals. But for now, feel free to reach out to those individuals. Again, this is the spread, for the technical expertise across the nation. I think everybody's familiar with this. But again, get familiar with this slide to kind of know who's who and who can support you in these opportunities. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Pete, who's going to educate us on some of the consulting services. So Pete, it's all you. We've got roughly 23 minutes before the end of the hour. We've got a couple more folks to get in.
Great, so I'll just take 24. No problem, as I usually do. No,
Perfect.
I'm kidding. I'll take 5 to 10 here, and we'll sling it in. So we're going to actually go through these slides pretty fast because I'm going to see a lot of the folks in QBRs, maybe not me personally, but you'll see Alex Abraham, and you'll see Scott Cameron and Steve Zipperman and some of the other folks on Irwin's team in consulting. We'll also be talking to a lot of these QBRs, including Sue Mallon. And like both Juan and Matt said earlier in the conversation here, this is not a new conversation for us. It's a lot. I don't want to say it's a lot of the same old, because it is and it isn't, right? The technology challenges, they're not physical, right? They're virtual. They are. It's a different set of questions, a different set of problems. But the difference for us in consulting is that these questions you see up on the board here, both the negative and the positive, right? I like to call this the sort of the yin and yang slide of reasons why our customers are being driven to public cloud, for example, on the left, and the benefits that they're seeking to derive out of public cloud on the right. And the root, I think, that all of these challenges have and these drivers have is that they take these business concerns, the financials, the consumption models, process controls, reference architecture, best practices, and take them from the realm of, we got this, we've been doing this long enough, we don't really need any guidance here, we're cool, to absolute must-dos if you're going to have a good time in the public cloud, as it were. Some things you just can't ignore anymore because once, as you've seen from some of the other studies that we've done over the past in our prior campaigns, that our customers that have jumped to public cloud tend to jump back to a certain extent as they learn what they should have done in the first place by way of building a strategy and so forth. So how are we here to help our customers? Go ahead and move on to the next one there, Matt. what we're aiming to do in consulting, and this represents a little bit of a change for us, but a welcome one I've been after for a long time, and I'm really thrilled to be here with it, is that we are aiming to be a turnkey organization to help clients move to wherever they're going, but obviously with respect to the public cloud, that's what we're talking about here today. I want to define the strategy. I want to help uncover those hidden business requirements that they have too long ignored. I want to define the reference architecture. I want to design it for them. I want to build it for them. I want to migrate them over there. And then I want to create an operating model that is very well instantiated, very well documented, so that when I hand it over to Phil Okonski and the managed services team for them to pick up and manage, they've got a clean shop to run with. I want to do this end to end, and I feel like for the longest time we've been trying to go this direction, and we've needed a compelling event, so to speak, and this is it. We've got some really fantastic folks on the team. A lot of training's been done. A lot of very skilled people we already have, and of course, you may or may not know, we've absorbed some of the hybrid cloud team from the Insight practice, and those are all really, really sharp people. It just amazes me every day. So I'm absolutely confident that we can do it. I think our hiring plans speak to the demand in our pipeline already without a whole heck of a lot of advertisement on the street. So how do we fit in this cloud optimization journey of sorts here? Go ahead and move on to the next one. As Matt had mentioned earlier, I like to call this graphic that's in the middle of the spine, and I like to call it that because it really is the backbone of our methodology as it's always been. And you take a look, you see a little bit of a tweak there to the 5 R's at the bottom of the slide, because we have been doing, as you well know, migrations and consolidations and data center strategy as our bread and butter in consulting, along with all these other bits and pieces we bring to bear to solve client problems for a long time. And that while that 5R model works very well, it's very strong, in fact, we're deep enough with our customers that we know that there are tweaks to those best practices and those elements of guidance that the Gartner model gives them. And what's great about this model is that it allows us to approach a customer methodologically and say, the further to the right you are along the journey already without having a plan, the more constricted your options are with respect to what to do with those workloads that exist today. So better to get it started with the plan and the strategy and the roadmap for your application portfolio today with us at DataLink and Insight than get 3 steps down the road and realize that you've already gone too far and you really don't have the option anymore to make certain decisions about those workloads. It's great because it opens up a whole lot of different places that we can serve. That's perfect timing, Matt. $20 will be in the mail. Love it. We have a lot of different entry points to help our customers, whether they're just getting started or whether they're much, much further down the road. And it's what's great, what enables that is having this huge body to draw from field services, from Blue Metal, from managed services, consulting services, and even some of our partners. And much of the outcomes, or many of the outcomes that you see on the slide here are really a lot of the same outcomes we've been seeking in the traditional data center world, because we just don't think of it as something too terribly different. We think about this as a problem that's always existed, and now we have an opportunity to go a lot deeper with our customers. Let me see, and we have one more here, and I'll only just give you a couple examples of exactly where those plays in consulting might lead you. So go ahead and hit the next slide there, Matt. There we go. So the way we've organized in consulting around this go-to-market is the 4 core sort of bodies of knowledge or skill set areas that have always existed in consulting, but now have given us the opportunity to define them a little better. The cloud transformation work, of course, it's our cloud architects and engineers and those consultants. The data center migration and optimization teams, those are the ones you always know and love, who are deep in the middle of the weeds with your customers, and they understand exactly what's going on under the covers. Combine that with our cloud transformation team, and we know precisely what it's going to take, how many folks, and we can help them migrate there. The security and risk management piece, of course, is our security practice. It's led by Jason Rader. They can talk about really anything along the spectrum. One of my favorite stories to tell, of course, is the most recent breach with our friends out at Equifax, and that just highlights the fact that The problems of information security in public cloud are not technical problems. These are process and control problems. And while we can go absolutely help you design, architect, and deploy the right firewall solutions and intrusion detection and identity management, none of that matters if the guy who's supposed to be doing the patching doesn't have a regular schedule and isn't held accountable to the process for making sure those things are done, which is exactly what happened at Equifax. IT service management and automation, I think, is even more important today than it ever was. You're going to move to the public cloud, especially if you have a multi-vendor strategy, which is one thing we don't necessarily recommend, but just for the sake of argument, you want self-service. You want a single portal. You want that kind of automation and orchestration to tie your hybrid cloud together along with your public cloud service providers. But you also need data protection and resiliency. You need backup. You need DR. And this is another great opportunity for us, I think, because when we say data protection, we mean DR, VC, and backup, and that aligns very, very well with our partner strategies around, for example, Veritas. And it allows us to solve problems ahead of time for our customers. For example, one of our university clients who decided that they wanted to put all their DR in the public cloud and at a cost of only $2 million a month. When we really dig up under the covers, DataLink and Insight could have delivered a better solution for them for about 10% of the cost if we'd only been engaged a little sooner. That's not a problem of the account team or any failure on DataLink's part. That's the customer just moved way, way too far down the road too fast, and hopefully they're not suffering for it. So we feel like we've got end-to-end solutions and services that already exist, a lot of new capabilities that we're bringing online with our hiring and our training, and we're really, really excited to move this forward. And ultimately, I'd love to see us engage every client and finish every large engagement with an opportunity to hand it over to managed services to run in perpetuity, just like I'm doing now. Phil?
Thanks, Pete. Great segue. So, hi, everyone. I want to briefly talk about two opportunities that managed public cloud we can provide to our clients. The first is a client has an existing cloud or something that our consulting and field brethren have architected and implemented. It still needs to be managed. Just because those workloads have moved to the public cloud, we all know they still need to be monitored, they still need to be managed. Incident, change, problem, all those things still need to occur. The client does not alleviate themselves from those responsibilities by just moving it to the public cloud. There's also by leveraging a managed services provider like DataLink, they don't need to build new processes, new tools, new skill sets to manage a public cloud. A lot of companies' tool sets and processes are built for an internal on-prem service. They've got to re-architect those, and we are able to provide that with a managed public cloud service. Again, it still allows the client to focus on higher level business activities. We can focus on things like optimization of the public cloud, looking at that public cloud and figuring out as it runs, giving a client visibility into where there are possibilities to optimize the client's cost and spend, as well as prevent overrun through analysis and regular program. Some of the major callings that happen within a public cloud. At the same point, this is all the same deliverables we have that we've done with a regular on-prem private cloud service. We can also do in a public cloud. And we're already doing this today, not only on the DataLink side, but also on the legacy Insight RNOC side, which is being integrated into the DataLink managed services come Q1 of 2018. So we already have this experience today in managing a public cloud. The second offering is if a client's seeking a rapid public cloud deployment and they're looking to wrap an entire service around public cloud, and that's just like our technology as a service or DataLink managed cloud, we can bundle in the public cloud consumption spend as well as our managed services offerings. Plus, we can even broker in other DataLink services like consulting, like field services. We've done this at companies like DataScan and SigmaCare and elsewhere, where a client consumes the public cloud, but they consume it in a managed and operated way, all under a single contract. Allows them to get to market quicker, allows them to lower their operational costs and reduce their risk. And quite honestly, we can do this built on models that we've done already. Our DataLink Central platform, which all of you are familiar with, that runs in the cloud today. That runs in the public cloud. So we're taking that same expertise, the same expertise that we use to monitor and manage our clients, that same expertise is going to be used to manage other clients' public clouds. And so we're excited to bring that to all of our clients and help accelerate their journey. So whether it's a result of a full strategy that Pete and the team have built, whether it's a client that's already halfway down the path of this and they feel like they've got it and they just need a managed public cloud, or anywhere in between, we're able to help and operate their clients' environments from that perspective. So,
great. Thanks, Phil. Appreciate that. Now what we're going to move on to next is Kent is going to give us an overview of some of the alliance plays, how this integrates with some of our existing partners. So Kent, you're up.
Excellent. Well, so with the theme of this is lots of information, I'm going to give a quick overview. You know, this is a moving target, how we're aligning with our existing partners, aka alliance plays. So it's evolving in a very positive direction. One of the things I'm realizing is our partners are trying to get used to what we know about public cloud. So while we might think this feels kind of newish to them, they're having trouble struggling with somebody that understands NetApp so well, but also understands public cloud. So this is all good, and we're seeing them start to leverage us more and more when they start to look at public cloud. So it's incumbent on you to make sure you communicate to your partners you're working with existingly our capabilities around public cloud and take advantage of that. So it's not new engagements. These are clients that you're engaged with already. I'm going to touch base on Microsoft, Veritas, NetApp, and Cisco very briefly because those are some that we've already made a lot of traction with, but you'll see more. One other thing to remember is that when you start engaging in these alliance plays, follow the instructions around digital partner of record. So if you're working with Veritas and you're extending that out into Azure storage, make sure that you get digital partner of record so you get credit for that. So let's go on to the next slide, talk about Microsoft Azure. You are going to be in the near future meeting the Microsoft teams. You're going to have more relevant if you meet the Microsoft teams with the context of your capabilities around storage. We're gaining tremendous traction with the Azure storage teams, and I'm going to show you some of the things that they're saying about us to their sales teams, et cetera. But when we talk about they want consumption, and then they think about the way we're going to get consumption is leveraging all the thousands of Veritas and NetApp and Rubrik, and these are the ISVs that they believe will drive consumption, and accordingly they say, oh, by the way, who else can put that together? Who can put together Veritas and Azure Storage, and they see us as their top go-to partner. So they have got plays internally, and we can actually go into the next slide. This is something that they're saying internally. The first slide is something that they're saying internally in what they call the Azure 10 and Storage 5. When a Microsoft salesperson goes in and says, okay, I've never done consumption before, how do I do consumption? They're going to see what Microsoft is saying about Insight and those ISVs. The second one is what they did at a breakout at Veritas Vision, talking about the capabilities we have aligned with Veritas. And then the third one is something that they started a couple weeks ago leveraging, and of course we helped build these slides, but this has actually showed up where somebody from Blue Metal is saying, hey, did you see this? This is what Microsoft is saying about us around our capabilities around the storage. And again, the capabilities we have around storage, the 1,000 partners we have with Veritas, what they can do, NetApp with all their cloud capabilities, Cisco, and more to come. So let's talk briefly a little bit about Microsoft Storage. This is a slide, we're not going to analyze this, but a number of people, we started with this at Mastery, a number of people, basically said, I wish I knew this. It's, essentially saying a couple of things. One, object storage, which is a lot of cloud storage, is a very competitive market with AWS, Azure, Google. Obviously, a lot of people think of AWS Glacier as the cheapest thing in the world. Azure is very competitive, so don't give up. Get Azure in there when clients say, hey, I just want to move to AWS, I just want to move to Glacier. It's a better offering, it's more flexible offering, and it's very price competitive, and actually even can be lower cost. But at the same time, one of the magic things that you need to understand is storage in the cloud is traditionally not efficient. So when you're doing dedupe and things like that, all of a sudden you're changing the calculus. So without it, and we'll show you solutions that have with it, but without it, you know, we can do things like NPS that are very competitive with their file storage, even hosted, things like that. So again, very quickly, we engage in storage. We're experts at storage. You're going to have technical teams that can go in and figure this out for you. But this is a slide that will help you understand at a highest level what some of the costs are. And again, follow up with more of that. So let's quickly go in and talk about Veritas. So Veritas, of course, we got 1,000 clients. Many of you are already engaged with clients. They're using net backup and things like that. They've started to think about data domain or have been thinking about data domain or tape and things like this. And when they think about their second site, they're trying to figure out what options do I have, whether it's appliance replication, data domain replication, et cetera. On September 19th, Veritas finally announced Cloud Catalyst. Cloud Catalyst can be exchanged with one of their appliances to replicate to the cloud efficiently, finally, not fully hydrated data, but efficient data. So finally, the ROI of moving that second site data to a cloud store makes sense. So with that, you can go and have a discussion that says, okay, now that we're going into, you know, the new version of you know, net backup, you know, let's come in and help you do a net back assessment, which will give you all kinds of information. But one of the things you're going to see is what they're trying to do with replication, where it fits into cloud. You know, is this the time to replace data domain? Is this the time to reduce tape, et cetera? So you're going to be able to have that discussion. Very interesting thing, and again, more information coming. But right now, Azure is so excited about this that they want to help us do trials. And it says this is not a release program because 2 weeks ago at Veritas Vision, they said, call me, I'll make this work. He's got a message into me saying, I've got this working for you and you only. So again, stay tuned, but you're going to be able to talk to a client and say, hey, have you thought about using a cloud as your offsite copy? I'm going to be able to get you a trial of Azure storage at no cost to get going. So next slide is NetApp. So NetApp, of all the storage partner, is the one that is really, really embracing public cloud. And so we could get into this, but, you know, that we've seen this. I'm talking about the data fabric, et cetera. But they've got things like NPS, right? So NPS was kind of, you know, a challenge until they added NetApp on Demand, which is the consumption model that goes with the cloud consumption model. So we're seeing traction pick up on that. Cloud ONTAP, which you can get from the Azure and AWS marketplace. You know, CloudSync, AltaVault, which is a backup solution. And then we're going to see them, you know, they announced at their kickoff, so this is no longer a secret. They announced last week at Insight that they are doing an NFS in Azure. And so there's all kinds of excitement about that. That won't be released until next year, but we're starting to prepare for how do we extend our NetApp clients into being able to use Azure storage and use the NFS service that will be available on Azure storage. So we've got multiple case studies in here. NetApp has gone through and identified, and they're saying, hey, I want people that really understand cloud. We were the first partner to get into what they call cloud first. And so now literally we're having discussions going, how do I deal with a partner that both knows with NetApp and has a relationship with Microsoft? They don't have very many. Worldwide doesn't have that. E+ got into the program. Presidio doesn't have that. So they're, you know, we're working with them to leverage us as their go-to partner for these things. And I believe we're going to see more and more of that. Starting in Orlando next week, there's going to be somebody in our QBR talking to us about this. If you saw my screen, he just said, I just got a note from Microsoft saying, okay, I've got this program for you. So very exciting. We're the only partner that can do NPS as a service. We're the only partner, the first partner in Cloud First, so a lot of excitement. And then finally, Cisco. Now, really what we're talking about is Azure Stack. We're going to hear a lot about Azure Stack. It was just released. Azure Stack is essentially the ability to take public cloud services and put it on a private cloud and have them work together. So they're really the only true hybrid cloud. The VMware's version of hybrid cloud is to port VMware to AWS. Microsoft is to say, port public cloud services into the private. It's available from a number of partners, and we haven't, determined if it's going to be one or the other. But the one thing that we do know is Cisco says, I'm not going to be the CSP. I want my partner to be the CSP. DataLink is, if you got nothing else out of this presentation, is an awesome CSP, and they've come to the realization that, you know what, we're trying to find them. We found you. We're going to take advantage of that. Again, as of last week, they're going into the early access program and saying, I want to talk about DataLink Insight. We're going into the early access program saying we're going to choose Cisco as our go-to OEM. So again, you'll see more about this moving forward. Azure Stack is not something that's going to drive a ton of revenue, but when you think about it, if you talk cloud, you talk hybrid cloud, you talk, and you get them interested in that, whether it's from the EA, the hybrid cloud discussion, any of those things, if you can do a POC on Azure Stack, you're going to be there as their consultant for a long time as they start building out their public cloud services and hybrid cloud services. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over, and again, you'll see more information later.
Thanks, Ken. Appreciate that. Guys, so I know we're wrapping up here. One last comment on Azure Stack. If you are enabled on Azure, you'll be enabled on Azure Stack. So keep that in mind as you move forward with it. So in closing, again, engage, transform, optimize. That's how we engage. These are the services that we can sell. That's the vision that we can set for our customers. Learn, evangelize, do, get engaged, go, ask the questions. What are you doing around public cloud? Get familiar with the materials, understand the partner plays. Please send me feedback by the end of this week, preferably. Put feedback in the subject line. If you got thoughts, ideas, I welcome that. Please send them to me. I know we didn't allow for Q&A on this call, just too much information. And to that fact, we did give you a lot of information. So feel free to reach out to any of us, ask those questions, digest this material. Again, what's the ask, what to go after? Ask the question, what are you doing around public cloud? Get strategic. Identify public cloud strategy for those customers. Get tactical. Focus on the business continuity DR solutions that Kent talked about with Veritas, or the storage operation, opportunities rather around NetApp. Understanding the Azure Stack, the partner plays. Get involved in public cloud governance and operations. Always thank you so much for your time. I know we went just a little bit over. We had a lot of material to cover. Thank you all to the presenters. Thank you for taking the time out to learn about what we're doing around the public cloud. And again, please send me your feedback. And if you have questions, please reach out to me. With that, we'll wrap it up.